A new update means TrickBot's getting trickier.
Hey Mike, I hear you have an interesting story about TrickBot today. I'm actually very interested about it because I've been doing a lot of analysis on it, so interested to hear what the story is about.
Yeah, TrickBot's an interesting one. I mean, it's been around for a really long time, right? It's one of those, stalwarts of the banking Trojan community, which is kind of continued to evolve over time and adopt new functions and features and, additional malicious behavior over time. It steals all kinds of different credentials. It is able to, look for Active Directory credentials. It steals cookies, SSH keys, all kinds of things. And it's even, been used to deploy other malware packages, such as, ransomware like Ryuk, in order to, continue to monetize its operations. It's recently been upgraded, yet again, to include a new kind of more stealthier propagation method that's particularly damaging and targeted for Windows networks. So previously, when TrickBot was deployed into a network and it found itself to be operating inside of a Windows environment, it would use a couple of modules to propagate in that environment. And one of them was called Nworm, which would start looking at exploitation of various SMB-related vulnerabilities to propagate through the environment, infect domain controllers, and the like. But recently, some analysts found that there were some a new module that had been included in at least a sample that they had obtained, which was called Nworm. And this one has some notable changes from its predecessor, Nworm, in that when it starts to deploy inside of the environment, it will actually deploy to the servers inside of the environment in an encrypted fashion. Previously, TrickBot would actually spread itself in an unencrypted manner so that when that unencrypted malware hit the domain controller, if that domain controller had anti-malware solutions resident upon it, it would be able to detect and quarantine that file immediately upon upload. This new version, however, encrypts the binary before it transmits it to the host, and it actually has the ability to detonate and infect the machine in memory, so it doesn't actually write to disk any longer. So these things combine to make it a stealthier infection module associated with TrickBot than it has been in the past. And particularly for domain controllers and servers, the malware is foregoing the typical methods of trying to establish persistence, right? Which is often done through, registry objects or, adding things to the startup menu and things like that. In this new module, it's actually foregoing persistence at all. It's actually banking on the idea that servers are very rarely ever rebooted. And so just being initially on the box and infecting the machine is good enough for their purposes at this time. And these things combined make it very difficult to detect, especially in those domain controller environments.
It's actually kind of scary because I think a lot of times TrickBot gets its initial foothold on your network, maybe through spam attacks or something. Like there's a Word document you click on, and you get tricked to install this malware. But this idea that it'll automatically spread to other machines in your network who weren't part of the original attack, it is actually very scary. And the fact that the adversaries are thinking about that, we know that APT groups and people like that, on the manual basis, they will spread through your network. But this kind of automated infection for the purpose of, stealing your financial data or propagating in your network automatically by some of these criminal groups, it's kind of scary. I think it represents a big evolutionary step in this type of threat. Very dangerous. So I think this is a threat that's, I think, very, like you said, it's it's well known, it's been studied for a while, but it continues to evolve. It continues to have new modules, and people really do need to take it seriously because it does steal a lot of personal information, VPN credentials, SSH passwords, SSH keys. It also steals anything that you have in your browser for safe passwords. And a lot of organizations do tend to be victimized who don't have mature security programs. So it's definitely important to be on the lookout for this threat.
And it's very difficult to get rid of. Very difficult to get rid of.
Yes. Yeah, some of these, I noticed, studying malware for a while, some of these criminal type malware kits are actually harder to get rid of than the APT malware kits that I've studied in the past. I don't know what it is about it, but these you're right, they do tend to stick around. They inject themselves into areas in a way that is really hard to take them back out again. I guess the only thing we can hope for is that rebooting the server, because they didn't add the persistence for the servers, maybe rebooting the server will take care of the infection. But, the truth is that's not so simple, because if you have, with that module, if you have one PC with it, you're pretty much going to continue experiencing reinfections. I think that's what we've seen. We've seen with WannaCry and things like that, right? If you have even one vulnerable PC in the environment, it's going to continue trying to propagate. And anytime you bring in a new PC, it's all, everything is at risk always.
Do you have any sense of how many versions of TrickBot have this new module? Did they talk about it? Because there's so many different versions out there, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's part of the challenge when you start talking about malware. A lot of it is tailored. Much of it is targeted to try, and avoid, signature detection and things along those lines. But some of these types of, evolutionary modules do kind of tend to make it into those broader code forks, if you will. I didn't see any particular information about the prevalence. It may have been buried elsewhere in the report that I didn't get to, but I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that.
I guess from my understanding of TrickBot, it's like Mike said, it's been around for so long, and there are many versions of it, and it's actually a very pluggable framework. So adversaries create new modules all the time to steal credentials from different locations or to spread in different ways. And I think there are, I don't know how many, I can't say because I don't know also, but I guess, dozens, if not, hundreds of different plugins. There's certainly hundreds of different commands that, can be transmitted. So, yeah, it's a very dangerous and persistent threat.